Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Eshwin, and
Happy
everybody else.
International
Happy
Yoga Day.
Saturday or Sunday. We'll actually record this on Saturday, but you might not see it until Sunday. So happy weekend and happy International Yoga Day.
Yes, yes, it's beautiful. And I'm so glad that we are meeting up this morning. And we will be introducing the topic. We'll start with our chanting first, like the usual. Um, Gopika Smanam Govinda, Govinda, Shri Sadgurunath Maharaj Ki Jai. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Okay, so there you go.
Eshwin,
Thank you.
and I'll add a
So
little
we'll start.
intention as I'll add a little intention as well. So when you're listening and you suffer from asthma and or lung disease or someone you know, just sort of just sitting for a moment and allowing the information to just come through and see whether, some things, when we suffer for things from an ailment, like I have migraines, you have people giving you so much information all the time. Everyone wants to help you. So just listen with an open mind and know that we're all different and not everything works for everyone, but you might learn something for you. And I'll just hand you back over to Eshwin.
Thank you, Sam. So we're talking about lungs and respiratory conditions. So mainly asthma, which is asthma is one of the most common lung diseases in Australia. The other ones would be bronchitis, COPD, cystic fibrosis, lung cancer, pneumonia, and TB was, still comes as one of the common lung diseases, which but it's not that common now. So what happens in asthma is your airways become inflamed and narrowed, and we then cannot breathe. And that is what really asthma is. And so today I think we'll start with Sam. Like we'll start with how we can, what are the before we go on to medications and management, which is really complex. Like because when we talk about asthma or the lung conditions, there's heaps of research, there's lots of medications, and I'm not saying that any of the things that we say will take your medications away. This is more just to help make your lungs healthier. And we'll talk about the medications like towards the end because there's important message on medications and how to use your medications in asthma as well. So we'll go to Sam.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely never stop taking your medication. These are all complementary. I wanted to say that more recently, because I have to do first aid every 3 years and CPR every year, obviously, for anyone who runs business. And when we were going over the asthma, 4 pumps, wait 4 minutes, etc. If you're an asthmatic, you know what we're talking about. Uh, um, in the resting stage, they encouraged you to have your hands up like this, okay, which opens up the lung ways. And when they did that, I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, because in the Chinese meridian, or there's a few different sort of modalities that use the meridians. Um, and they run from like the neck all the way down the arm, which is the lung from the thumb all the way up to the inner shoulder there. They're slightly different. Some have different lines, but basically it's the arms. And then there's the large intestine, which is the complementary meridian. So you want both of them working, is the from the neck all the way down. So it makes sense when you're moving your arms, not only creating space for the lungs, but you're stimulating those meridians. So with asthma, there are many healthy approaches, but rather than overwhelm you, I'll just suggest two things that nearly everyone with asthma could practice. It's not going to do you any harm. It's only going to help. It's not going to hinder everything you do carefully. So with regards to movement, Yeah, you can use that lung and large intestine meridian and you can just sort of tap on it. You can tap all the way down the pointer finger. What's interesting as well is lungs receive and expel, and so does the large intestine. It receives and expels. So that's probably why they're related. That's just my opinion. It's not a professional opinion. That's just my logic. So we would tap along the that whole line for the large intestine and then flip, and it's under the thumb there, and you would go all the way up to that point here. So you can go up and down, up and down. So you can just sort of if you don't do any other exercise, you can just tap all along those. And then the other one and stretch them back. You can tap the lungs and make sound. So
Yeah, that feels better.
yeah,
All
I
the
feel
tapping.
awake on one side of the body, and and combined with that sort of, if we're talking about a physical movement, anything that uses the arms is going to be using like activating those meridians, but strengthening and sending blood flow to the lungs. So any sort of push-ups, arm movements, anything that to do with the arms, and that will help to kind of stretch the ribs, the intercostal muscles. You can do tapping. If you've been to my class, anyone's been to my classes know we do a lot of tapping, a lot of sound.
I love this tapping.
Yeah. And just wake them up. And if you've got someone, you can tap it on the back. Uh, but of course, the number one thing would be breathing. And whether you're doing a yogic breathing, your own breathing, there's lots of breathing apps. Buteyko method is a breathing method that was created, I think, in the early 70s, which gives great results with asthma. So what it does is it starts to strengthen the lungs. So when we breathe deliberately and begin to extend the breath and hold the breath out at the end of the breath. So when we breathe, there's four parts to a breath. You breathe in, there's a little pause. You breathe out, there's a little pause. You may or may not notice it. If you just sit and observe, you might notice that you just breathe in and out. Sometimes you notice that little pause after you breathe in, and sometimes you notice a pause when you breathe out. After you've been centering and focusing on the breath and calming the breath down, you'll definitely start to notice them more. And with asthmatics, as far as I'm aware, is that when you hold the breath out after the exhale and then allow the lungs to take the air back in, it allows the lungs to take a full breath of air in, which is a bit like what the Buteyko does. It actually encourages you to start to lengthen the exhale so that when the breath in comes in, it's a full breath in. So when anyone with asthma will know that you just can't get a breath in. And then there's a lot of fear around that and anxiety. And as Eshwin will probably bring up, there's many, many, many triggers. Like migraines, many triggers for asthma. However, asthma is life-threatening. And no, I don't think anyone's died of
Yes.
a migraine, but people die from asthma attacks. So I think why the breathing is so important is it's accessible to anybody. So you can practice breathing every day. Just simple box breathing. You get an app, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 4, hold the breath out for 4, breathe in for 4. And it's going to give you all the other lovely benefits of feeling calmer and
Yes,
rested.
yeah, I would like to add to that. Like, I think um, you know, breathing is like something that we do all the time. But I think once I started yoga, and I learned that you really have to be conscious of that breathing as well. And I think when you're talking about this, breathing, like the box breathing and things, that is just being conscious of. We are breathing in and out all the time, but yeah, this is like being conscious of that breathing, right? Like, am I
Yeah,
right, Sam? Like, yeah,
it's not, yeah, absolutely. It's being conscious and it's also strengthening. So
yeah.
if you are always breathing shallow breath, it's just always a light shallow breath, which a lot of asthmatics will breathe, the chest breathe, and it's little. All the little trees, that's what I call them, the alveoli, the little trees in the lungs.
The
They
lung
get
energy.
Yeah, they get stiff. They're not able to, they're not supple, they're not like a windy tree, they're like a stiff old tree. They don't absorb the oxygen. So the breathing exercises help to make those little trees move again and breathe and be able to take in more. And it just made me think when you were talking about the box breathing. Yeah, so a lot of so that consciousness of breathing is that a lot of asthmatics, especially the ones that don't get that many attacks, don't think about the prevention, which is the breathing. So if you're doing breathing exercises regularly and strengthening your lungs, not only are your lungs better and that you're a little bit armed with the knowledge that your lungs are healthier, you can also feel calmer when you're having an attack. So you can actually go, you know what, actually, if I just try and hold my breath out and just be with it, be conscious, don't panic because
Yeah.
it's not panic's not going to get you anywhere. You've got your Ventolin, you've hopefully got somebody helping you, but essentially what you can do for yourself is to know that you're practicing on strengthening your lungs when you're not having an asthma attack, and that you get the myriad of other beautiful benefits from that regular breathing practice. So that, I know I've done a lot of talking. I just want to say that one thing, there's obviously many things, but if there was one thing you took away, practice just box breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, that try to strengthen your ability to hold the breath out after you've finished exhaling, because that is what's going to start building the lung strength from the inside.
Thank you, Sam. That's wonderful. And yes, I do agree. And breathing has a lot of good benefits, and we should all have those breathing apps and try those apps at least a few times a day, and do some conscious breathing. So you talked about the triggers, the triggers for asthma, and so I think it's important to mention that so what we there's a term we called asthma-friendly homes. So, there's a lot of the triggers for asthma are in the homes, and some of them are like dust mites, moles, pollens, pets, air conditioning, cold, dry air, and deodorants, air fresheners, cleaning products, and things like that. So, they thing is, if anyone is suffering from asthma, then we can work on avoiding carpets, so that if a lot of the times we will have sometimes if we do have to have carpet, this particular type of carpets that's recommended, that will prevent those dust and dust mites. Vacuum and mop the floors regularly. Wash the beddings in hot wash. That's also recommended. Pets, it could be hard, like people have pets in the home, but if there's somebody regularly suffering from asthma, then you'd have to think around that as well. Wood fires are big triggers. So wood fires will create a lot of smoke, and they can trigger asthma as well. Electrical heating is what they do recommend. When it comes to medications, so a lot of the times, like if you're just short of breath, you'd be given a short-acting, we call it a bronchodilator. What it does is opens up your airways, and you probably know it by the names. The actual name is salbutamol, but you'll probably know it by other names like Ventolin, or there's millions of other names there. The thing is that with the short-acting bronchodilators, there's a few types. Like Ventolin is obviously the common one, but there's other ones out there as well, and these are available in the pharmacy, and you can go to the pharmacist and ask for it. And people find it easy. So what they do is they will go into the pharmacy and ask for the Ventolin, and probably and what Ventolin, because it opens up your air and airways, and you feel better quickly. A lot of people just do that and don't do anything else. But the recommendation is, like, if you're using the Ventolin more than 3 times a week, you need to go to your doctor so that you can be prescribed what we call an inhaled corticosteroid. So that it's a steroid in a medication form, but you are inhaling it so that it can reduce inflammation. And that would be used regularly, so that you do not use the the short-acting bronchodilators as much. So, I think my message there would be, if you're using your short-acting bronchodilator, like salbutamol, more than 3 times a week, you need other medications added. There's more to asthma management, and when you go to a doctor, you'll probably be, given more information on how to do these things. Other thing, I think that and with the steroids, once the steroids are added, the inhaled steroids, like people think of steroids and they might be thinking, am I recommending the steroids? These are inhaled steroids. Clinical trials are done with these things, and they are specifically for asthma. When you're using inhalers, so the inhalers are the devices that we use, these should be used with spacers. So there's a lot of devices available now, like the turbohalers, elliptors, and things. You can't use them with the spacers, but there's metered dose inhalers that need spacers. Why we use the spacers? Because when we use the spacers, the medication will go directly to your lungs, and that's where we want them. Because if you're not using the spacers, it's going everywhere else, and it will cause side effects. So to reduce the risk of adverse effects and to have it go and act where it's supposed to work, we need to use our inhalers with spacers. So if you're using an inhaler without a spacer, my suggestion would be go get yourself a spacer, because that will improve your medication efficiency heaps. That's one of the things. I think the first aid steps are important, and I think Sam mentioned a few of it. So the important thing is, like, if somebody is like really short of breath, having an attack, the person should be sitting upright. So, we do not lie down the person or anything. They should sit upright. You do 4 separate puffs of the short-acting bronchodilator, which is the salbutamol, or better known as the blue puffer. And then you put the 1 puffer into the spacer, and the person takes the 4 breaths. And then if the breathing is still not improving, you do that the same procedure of 1 puff, 4 breaths, 4 times. And, that would be, and by then, you should be calling the ambulance, and if the breathing is not improving. And so the message there is, if you're using your blue puffer more than 3 times a week, you need more, and you need to see a doctor for more medications or a review of your asthma symptoms. And, other thing is using your inhalers with spacers is important, and learn how to use your inhalers. So you can always go into the pharmacy and get your, how are you using the inhaler? Get that reviewed by the pharmacist, because they'll tell you if you're not using it correctly. Well, if you're using a medicine, you better use it correctly. Otherwise, what's the purpose? You're just wasting money, and it's not even working for you.
Exactly.
So I think that those would be my important messages on asthma. And
I would add to that from back in the first aid, if anyone is curious. So I'm known for a while, but I didn't know for that long that actually anybody can buy the Ventolin, excuse me, at the chemist. You don't need a prescription for it. So it's a good thing to actually keep in your first aid box, so that you can actually help people who may be having an asthma attack. And yeah, not forgetting that they can have the arms in between, and sometimes they don't have a spacer, especially adults with their little Ventolin things. So really just encouraging them to breathe in almost like for 4, like try and suck it for 4 seconds, like slowly hold 4 seconds. But yeah, the spacer, like all children definitely should have the spacer. And like I didn't, of course, with steroids, you don't want you don't want that medicine going everywhere. You want it going straight into the lungs. And I have heard of people reducing their medication through breathing techniques. So
yeah, the problem is with the adults, that the adults think that the spacers are for the children.
Yes.
The spacer is for everybody. Everyone needs a spacer. So if you're using inhalers, you need a spacer. And the Ventolin as well. Like if you go into a pharmacy, yes, anybody can buy it, and you do not need a prescription, but you will need to have a conversation with your pharmacist, because they will ask you a few questions before they hand you the inhaler, because that's just how it works.
Yeah.
That's the policy. So they it's just not sold like, you would sell other over-the-counter products.
So
So
I don't know.
it's more to initiate conversation. And
Yeah.
because once you initiate a conversation, they find out more probably about you, and they will give you good information about how to use it, when to use it, if is it time to see the doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's lots of other lung conditions which we don't want to overwhelm you, and there's so much information. So we didn't really touch on other lung conditions so much.
Yeah,
However,
like COPD
breathing
and
goes across,
smoking.
yeah, breathing goes across the board. Doesn't matter what condition you have, mindful breathing is going to benefit you. And there's also like we'll talk about it more another time, especially if there's some interest, because there's, what you're eating as well as the environment as well. Like there's so much more, but from me,
Yes,
take
yes.
away the breathing. Yeah.
That's right. Like it's a very huge topic to cover, like in 30 minutes. And but as I said, since we are, you mentioned like other conditions, I guess smoking is always a thing. Like if you have any lung conditions, then you have to think about not smoking. And
Yeah.
yeah, we could do we could do a video on that, and
Yeah.
maybe Sam can give us some tips on how we could naturally get rid of addiction. Okay.
And
Thank you. So this is the end. Like this is we'll meet next week
absolutely.
with a new
We
topic.
will do a little, we'll, unless we hear from someone, oh, well, you've got a list from somebody of the things they would like to hear about. But we also, if we get a comment, um, we might entertain talking about that next week. Otherwise, once we've decided, we'll do a couple of little shorts. And yeah,
Yeah,
please
and I'm
subscribe,
like
like, have a fabulous weekend. Happy International Yoga Day. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, Eshwin.
that's all right,
You
Sam.
go.
You can do that. Yes, we are encouraging everyone to subscribe. Like, if you keep on subscribing, then we can come back with all these tips, more and more tips every week.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.